Welcome to another episode of RfR Deconstruction Stories. I'm Rob Palmer, and I'm an ambassador and helpline agent for Recovering from Religion. Often someone reaching out to us on the helpline for support asks for the agents we're helping them to tell them where they stand on religious matters, or they want to know about their religious background, or to hear about their deconstruction story. Well, personal disclosure is discouraged on the helpline, so this series is intended as an online resource for people with those questions about our volunteers. In this episode, I'll be talking with volunteer Steve Ghikadis. Welcome, Steve, and thanks for doing this with me.
Yeah, thanks so much, Rob.
Steve is apparently coming from some undisclosed underground bunker, but so you're at work, I guess, on break.
I am, yeah. So I've been sent to the prison here, I guess. Yeah.
Okay. So what do you do for RfR?
So currently, I am an ambassador and helpline agent. Formerly, I was 1/3 of the ambassador director team, and before that, I was an online community director with John, and just been doing things here and there throughout for the last 5 years.
And people might tell from your accent how you just said one of those words that you're from Canada.
Yeah. Yes, if I say a boot, I'm not talking about my shoes.
It's really the only thing that I can tell about that Canadians aren't Americans, that oot sound in a lot of words, frankly.
Yeah, and I do say a lot after my sentences. Yeah.
And I don't know, some Canadians are known to apologize about everything. I haven't heard you specifically doing that, but it's just the thing.
Yeah.
All right. So tell us about your original beliefs. What religion were you raised in, and how firmly did you believe it?
Yeah, so I'm a little bit of an oddball. And so in the book that I wrote, I actually talk about how my life was circular or cyclical, whereas I was raised a free thinker, even though I was baptized Anglican. So I was baptized in the Anglican Church. I even have my christening ring and my christening suit from when I was that age.
So is Anglican, is that the Church of England? Is that what that is?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So Canada's heavily influenced by the monarchy. So we're still a colony technically. So they call it a colony, but yeah. So we still report to the king. So therefore, yeah, it's Church of England basically. But I was baptized Anglican, but my mom actually was going through a bit of a period of kind of being scared of the world, the way things were. It was during the Cold War. I was born in 86, and she thought that the nuclear bombs were going to fall anytime. So she's like, maybe I should get them baptized. Maybe maybe there's something to this religion thing, and it's just kind of how that happened. But basically, after I was baptized, we maybe went to church maybe once or twice, like Christmas, Easter, something like that. But I actually didn't really believe it, even when I was that young. I just didn't really find it to be compelling. And then I started going to different churches and mosques and synagogues and things with my friends at school because I had such a diverse community where I grew up. And I started to see it as all...
Was that because you were actually searching for a better, religion, or just because you were hanging out with your friends and you felt...
Just hanging out with friends, yeah. It was friends that were like, oh, you should come check out my youth group. And I'd be like, okay, cool, whatever. And I'd just go, and then I'd be like, oh, well, it's funny that they believe this stuff. I think it's just stories, but I mean, it's, whatever floats your boat. And it kind of gave me a really good outlook on, religion as being a story that we tell. We're storytellers as human beings, right? So
at what age is that you were not necessarily believing the details?
That was probably about 9 or 10. And
wow,
then
really young.
Yeah. And then I think when I was about 11 or 12, I started experimenting with the idea of, I really like this girl. God, if you can make this girl like me, then I'll believe in you. And kind of, trying to tempt or get this deity to help me out. I even went into the woods when I was about 13 or 14, and I said, Zeus, if you're real, hit me with lightning. And lucky for everyone here watching, that didn't happen. So
yeah, I'm surprised you didn't ask for a positive thing as opposed to disclaiming it.
Well, it's kind of at this point, I'm like, if there's anything out there, just hit me with what you got, and I'll believe it, kind of thing.
Well, if it hit your lightning, you wouldn't be there to believe it.
That's true. That is definitely true. Yeah.
So, wow! In your young age, did you believe in Satan and demons and
No,
hell
I
and things like that?
no, I never really believed in any of that stuff. My grandfather on my mom's side was actually a Catholic. Actually, sorry, it was my grandma's father, so my great grandfather. He was a Catholic, but he would always say that we live our heaven and hell here on earth. He actually was a World War One survivor. He actually lost a lung at Ypres. He had his lung eaten by chlorine gas, and basically came home and had 9 children after that. But basically was saying that we live our heaven and hell here on earth. So that's the way we treat people, and that's the way that we experience hardships and positivity. So
So you mentioned you wrote a book. This is recent, right? So tell folks about it.
yeah, so it came out on March 23rd, which is World Atheist Day, and the audiobook was released on World Humanist Day, which is kind of cool. But it's a book about getting along with people regardless of what your backgrounds and beliefs are, because I'm married to a Christian. And the whole reason I became involved with recovering from religion in the first place was because of my wife. And then I think you'll remember this, but it was about 2 years I was volunteering with RfR before I was even able to tell her that I was doing that.
Yeah, I recall you telling you like you were going to do something on Zoom from home, and then, oop, my wife is home today, surprisingly, so I have to cancel this appointment because she doesn't know anything about this, and I was shocked.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so
Uh,
so that's
so
kind of
when you got married, so Steve, by the way, has a video on RFRX Talks where he talked about this subject. So you can look that up. What was the name of it?
I think it's interfaith family,
Yeah, yeah.
marriage and parenting's mutual
Okay,
respect.
so I remember you telling the story of, well, correct me if I'm wrong. My memory is that your father-in-law at the reception was doing a toast and basically saying something like, "I'm so happy that my daughter married somebody who was like, as much in the faith as she is," and you're sitting there feeling like a black. So is that
Yeah.
true? And how did you get to that point where they didn't know that? Did your wife not know that either?
Yeah, so that's the trouble with pretending to be something you're not. So when I met my wife, the whole thing was is that I was experiencing a lot of things throughout that time period of my life. I had joined the Masonic Lodge as a promise to my late grandfather at 21, I think 21 or 22. I had joined the Masonic Lodge, and one of the questions is you have to believe in a higher power. So I was like, well, I guess when I walk under power lines, I can say that there's a higher power than me.
Oh, man, no.
And I was kind of at the same time going like, oh, I wonder if the ancient alien theory is maybe right, or that kind of thing. Just kind of going through these weird conspiracy theories and things. And so I joined the Masonic Lodge. They brought me in. They kneeled me down at the altar. They pulled a bag off my head and said, "Who do you put your faith in?" And then they whisper in your ear, "In God." So I said, "In God?" with a question mark. And they were like, "Yay, he believes in God," and whatever. And it was very Christian oriented. It was very like biblical. All the ceremonies are all biblically based, which was kind of cool because then I got to learn more about the Bible through these stories. And at the same time, I met my wife, who was going to the United Church, which is kind of like a Methodist church, I think, in the States.
Wait. Was she in the Masonic Lodge too?
No, so the Masonic Lodge is only for men.
Of course
But
it is.
I met her. Yeah, I met her at the same time that I was going through this. So I was like, oh, okay, well, maybe there's something to this if she's religious and I'm going to this religious organization. And then I started like digging in to see like, do I believe this stuff? And then the answer was no. But at the same time, I was attending church with her and her family and stuff like that, and I wasn't really saying, "Hey, I'm not a believer." I just kind of went with the flow, and they just assumed, because I'm sitting there in the pews beside them, they just assumed that I was, religious, and it got to
Did,
the
did, you,
point.
did you not have any personal conversations with your wife about the subject?
So we had a few times where I had mentioned, that I don't think it's just that someone who is a murderer can ask for forgiveness and get into heaven and things like that. So we had those type of conversations, but it never really went very well.
Okay.
I was kind of doing more of the burning the bridges, with these questions that I was asking, and it was more like, we don't talk about that stuff, or we don't ask those kind of questions, right? So I was like, okay, whatever. And then, we got to the point where we were at our wedding, and the minister, it was a very religious wedding, just because of, inherently that's what we were experiencing at that time. And then, yeah, the toast at the wedding was both my in-laws were saying, we're so happy she met a man who believes the exact same thing she does. And I'm like, ah, shit, because I don't, and I felt like a wolf in sheep's clothing. So I started lashing out. I started like making, broad proclamations about how horrible and harmful religion is, and went through a really rough go.
Wait, not at the reception.
No, thankfully, no. I was, it took a few days, but then I was really starting to lash out and just saying, like, how can you believe in this crap and whatever, and made it into a big deal. You know, really, really poorly handled. Once with very bad, angry
And
atheist face.
specifically with your wife, you were
Right.
having these conversations on.
Yeah. Yeah. It was just with my wife, and I mean, yeah, just my in-laws. I never really talked to them about it, but they could tell, that I was not like, my mother-in-law would ask me to go to church, and I'd say no, so they knew something was up. And so I started looking for resources, and I came across Recovering from Religion through like the Atheist Experience and those shows. And I thought, like, I should reach out myself, which I never did. I never actually reached out on my own for help. But at the same time, I was finding people like Anthony Magnabosco, who does those cordial conversations, street epistemology, on YouTube. So I was able to reach out to him and ask for help. I was like, help me, I need to find a way to have good conversations with my friends and family that are religious, and
But
and
you
at the
went
same
right to the
time,
source, right to the
right to the
source of
source.
the
Yeah.
epistemology. That's fantastic.
Yeah, that's right. And then eventually he wrote the foreword to my book, so that was kind of a cool circular moment as well. But Dale McGowan also, author and professor at the university, but he was he wrote books on interfaith relationships and raising families in the interfaith household, and I just
You don't fool around with this. Most people just go to
no.
Quora and ask a random person something. You
Yeah,
go to
no. So I
the
reached out
source
to
of it.
reached out to both of them and got some really good help with that, and they became really good friends of mine. And for about 5 or 6 years, we were talking back and forth. I mean, we still do, but they helped me tremendously, and I was able to rebuild those bridges that I had burned. And then at the same time, applied for a position with Recovering from Religion, because I was thinking, like, if I can help myself through this, I can help other people through this as well, because I knew a lot of people would be struggling with the same type of issues. And then eventually, just this year, I wrote the book because I felt like I'm at a point now where I can help other people that are also experiencing the same type of ways. And it's not even really like a how-to guide. It's more of a memoir with a twist. It's more like, these are the things that happened to me, and this is how I dealt with it. And if you can get something from that, then that's good.
Prior to writing the book, did you put anything on the Recovering from Religion blog?
Yeah, that's actually how the book started. So I started off by putting the pieces on the blog there, and people were asking for me to compile them
Yeah.
into
So
a book.
how can people find that if they want to read that?
The blog? Yeah, it's
Yes.
on Excommunications through Medium. So if you go on Medium and go to Excommunications, that's where the RfR blog is. But yeah, so people were asking me to compile them all into a book, and I said, okay, sure, I can do that. So I threw them all together and gave them to somebody who said that they would edit them for free, who's actually an author friend of mine. I didn't know she was an author, and I didn't even know who her name was when it popped up, because it was actually someone who I had helped in high school. And she said, you don't know me because my name is a pen name, but this is so-and-so. And I'm like, oh, cool. And so she was like, oh, okay, I'll read it all for you and edit it. And then she's like, this is no good. And I'm like, oh, really? She's like, yeah, like like there's some funny stuff here. There's some really heartwarming stuff here, but it's not flowing. You don't have like a central message. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I guess I'm just never going to do this. And then she's like, yeah, don't let it get you down. Just, continue to work on it. And I was just like, nah, I'm done with it. And then I was hosting the podcast for Humanist Canada. And they asked me to come up with the name of a segment that I was doing. And I'm like, well, it's kind of from the heart. So maybe Humanism from the Heart. And I'm like, wait a minute. That's a really good title for my book. And then I'm like, maybe I can start writing the book again and have some more inspiration. And then I'm like, well, what am I trying to do with this book? Well, I'm building bridges, and it's kind of beyond belief. So building bridges beyond belief is a good subtitle. So then I came up with the title of the book. And then from that moment on, I was able to put pen to paper and get everything in the right order, and, rewrite some of the stories I had already done, but make them in a more coherent way, and string everything together. And then she said, yeah, you nailed it. This is really good stuff. And then she put her name stamp on it, and then, the rest is history.
Excellent. So I want to go back to the point where you revealed, I'll say, to your wife that you were a volunteer for Recovering from Religion, because we get a lot of people who call. Obviously, you know this too. Who, like, I actually had somebody who was calling from his cell phone in his shed because his wife was home, and he couldn't have his wife know that he was never mind contacting us, that he was having any doubts at all. We get a lot of calls where people are concerned about bringing up stuff. to their spouse. Yeah. So how did that go when you did tell your wife finally, hey, I've not only been in contact with recovering from religion, but I volunteer there?
Yeah. So it was a bit of a struggle, but what happened was is that I started revealing things slowly over time. I read Greta Christina's book, and it talked about how don't just sit people down and say, hey, listen, I got this big news to tell you and whatever, right? So
Wait,
I was more.
what's her book title?
Uh, I can't remember what the name of it is off the top of my head, but I know it's one of
Okay,
our resources on the resource
I
page.
will look it up while you're talking. Go ahead.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah. So basically, she says, like, don't just sit everyone down and say, mom, dad, I got something to tell you, right? Like, you just gotta slowly work it in, and that's basically what I did. I just said, like, I don't really think I, believe this stuff, at the beginning, and then I went through that angry atheist phase where I was basically decimating people's beliefs, and then I went back to more of a, like, I understand where you're coming from, and I know why you believe this, and I know how it has meaning for you, but for me, it doesn't have any meaning, and I find my meaning in other things. And then I said, there's this organization I've been volunteering for a couple of years now, and I've been afraid to tell you what it is because of the name. And I said, like, the name is a bit of a misnomer because it's called Recovering from Religion. But you don't necessarily have to recover from religion because not all religion is harmful. It's just talking about the harmful aspects of religion. And I said, but what we do is, we're not there to deconvert anyone. We're there to be a shoulder to cry on, or someone to hug, someone to listen to your concerns. And I said, we're never trying to push someone in a certain direction. If someone wants to continue to be religious, we're all for that. If they want to find a church that's, less fire and brimstone, we help them do that as well. So, that's kind of the way I was able to frame it. And she was like, oh, wow, it sounds like a really good organization. And then, then it was funny because then she was like trying to find a way to tell her mom about the organization that I volunteer for. And she's like,
Do you know how she did that? How did you do that?
um, so I think what happened at first, she said, like, he's volunteering for a non-religious organization. And then she said, like, non-denominational. And she goes, no, non-religious. Because everyone always says, oh, non-denominational, right? Because then they think like, oh, it just means, that you're Christian, but it's just not a denomination, whatever. Which non-denominational actually means Baptist, but people don't really realize that.
No, I didn't know that. So how did other people in the family take it?
So my mom, like I said, she kind of raised me as a free thinker because she did all the things that Dale McGowan puts out in his book, Parenting Beyond Belief. But it was like 20 years before that book was written. So she kind of did all the best practices without really knowing what they were, which was allowing me to remain unlabeled, allowing me to have religious literacy, learn about different religions. She encouraged me to be empathetic and to, see someone's face and say, oh, what do you think that person's feeling? What do you think you could do to make them feel better? That kind of thing. And, just have that peaceful coexistence. So I was able to have that as a child, and that definitely helped me do that. But so like my mom, I never had to really explain anything to her. My grandmother, who was a Catholic, I don't want to say I deconverted her, but basically just having conversations. She was like, yeah, I don't think there's a God, and
Wow, that is
yeah,
highly unusual for a person who's been in it for that long.
yeah, for
Just
sure.
must have
Hmm.
been having doubts her whole life otherwise.
Yeah. And I think that was part of it too, because my grandfather, who had passed, in his early 60s and he'd been gone for quite a while, he was always a more of a free thinker as well. He was a Protestant of some background. I'm not sure what it was exactly because I know his family is from Scotland. But basically he was a free thinker. He always, questioned a lot of the authority of the church and stuff like that. So,
So
but yeah, so
I found Greta's book, by the way. I think
okay.
she's got several, because there's the one Coming Out Atheist, How to Do It, How to Help Each Other Out Doing It, something like that.
Hmm.
Is that the one?
No, it was like
There's so
it was
many.
her first book, I
She's written a
think.
lot of books. The Way of the
Yeah.
Heathen,
No,
um, Three Kinds of Asking for It. I think that's hers. Wow.
it
Comforting
was
Thoughts.
it was her very first one. If you can find the very
All
first.
right, so people will have to Google this.
Yeah,
Why
sorry about
why
that.
are atheists so angry? She wrote a book.
No, it wasn't that one. But that one sounds like it would have been helpful to me.
Yeah. That is a common theme, of course, for callers, because there's several things that can make you angry about the religion, any religion, if you come out of it after believing it for a long time. First, you don't people get angry when they feel they've been lied to, right? And that's, the thing we try to help people. Well, the people who are telling you this mostly weren't lying to you; they believed it. So
Yeah,
that might
they
make
were
it a little.
victims of
Yeah,
bad
right,
information. Yeah,
right. And the other thing that makes people angry sometimes is, their mind was of a sort that would change with new information. And most people, frankly, are not like that. And then they expect, I'm just going to tell other people what I found and they should just snap to it. And that doesn't work. And then they get angry.
yeah, and that can cause the backfire effect, because if you
Yeah.
use a lot of facts and evidence and stuff like that, sometimes people will double down on their beliefs and push it away.
Yeah. So tell the folks watching about the difference between that approach and street epistemology.
Yeah, so street epistemology is using the Socratic method to ask questions about why people believe what they believe. So, you can say, what gives your life meaning, as opposed to saying, why do you believe in myths? Right? So it's just you're giving someone a little bit more, I don't know, kindness, generosity. You're being more generous to them, and you know stating that that they have meaning in their beliefs, and that it's not necessarily something that they consider a myth. But yeah, if you come at somebody with evidence and you say, well, in the Bible it says, to stone women if if they don't bleed on their wedding night, whatever, they're not gonna, they're gonna push back on it and say, no, it doesn't mean that. It means this and this, that, and the other, and it was a different time and all those things, right? So they're gonna come up with excuses for it. Whereas you can ask questions like, do you know what the Bible says about, women on their wedding night? What happens if they, if they don't bleed, or how many, what's the percentage of women that you think bleed on their wedding night, right? That kind of thing. Like, I know it's a disgusting topic, but those are the kind of questions that you can ask. And so, it's somebody that's coming to their own conclusions. It's maybe questions they've never been asked before. It's things
And
that they have
making
to
them
think
think
about.
about things puts little seeds of doubt, perhaps, that if they want to
Perhaps.
follow, they can, as opposed to, you're wrong and this is why.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. And I
Yeah.
feel like, even just someone coming to you and saying, you're going to burn in hell, right? Like, that's just a statement, and it's not founded on anything. So you're going to push back on it. Whereas, if someone comes and says there is no God, right? It's just a statement without any uh, backing claim or backing evidence. So it's a way to have a better conversation, instead of just coming and barking things at people and expecting them to just
Yeah, and
kowtow.
I do tell this to the people on the helpline, the ones who call about being angry because people won't listen to them and they're constantly arguing with people. And I do tell them about, you mentioned the backfire effect, and that's a well-studied phenomenon, like a psychological known fact, that if you get somebody in an argument, they will construct reasons why they believe what they believe to push back on you, and they'll come out of the argument believing it even more strongly. Right.
Yeah, I do a few presentations on having cordial conversations. And one of the things I always say is to, take your time to respond to things, take your time to think about things, because, and when you're modeling the way that you want the conversation to happen, usually people will do the same thing. They'll take a pause, they'll think about it. You can even say, if you don't have an answer now, that's okay. We can touch on this later, right? Because people will just bark something back without thinking about it. And then it's like, do they actually believe this, or are they just saying this because they want to win the argument?
Right. So folks know a lot of these concepts you could find on the Recovering from Religion resources page. You go to recoveringfromreligion.org, click the resources tab, and there's a nice search bar there where you could put things like street epistemology, angry atheist, and pretty much any search term which is linked to the resources that our team has put in there, so that you can find it and help you work through whatever your issues are.
Yeah, and I think one of the number one search results is for fear of hell, because I think that's one thing that people are still, even if you've been out of religion for quite a long time, a lot of people are still afraid of the idea of hell because it's been so burned into their brain. Luckily
Right.
for
And
me,
that,
it was never burned into my
yeah,
brain. Or
that's fantastic. And then connected with that is the what if I'm wrong thing, right? Yeah. So yeah, I'm not thinking that there's, but what if I'm wrong? So I better act like there is, that kind of a thing. Pascal's wager. So you could, in fact, look that up as a search term, Pascal's
yeah,
wager.
and I like the way they've covered Pascal's wager over a lot of the talk shows and stuff, because they explain how it really isn't that well thought out.
Did you ever see the Simpsons clip about it?
No, I don't think so.
I was watching that episode live. It was quite a decade or more ago. Homer is always the not too smart one, in the family. But in this one clip, the skeptical writers gave him the right line. So, he doesn't want to go to church. Marge is the one who's always dragging the family to church every Sunday. They're having, I think it's breakfast on Sunday morning, and she's trying to rush everybody. And Homer is trying to think of ways to get out of going to church. And he says something like, Marge, what if you go to the church and you're praying to the God and you're praying to the wrong God and making the real God pissed off? Yeah, that's one of the problems with Pascal's wager. He just assumed the Christian God, in fact, I think it was the Catholic God, or no God. No other options.
That's good. I like that. Simpsons is funny. I like Young Sheldon a lot too. They come up with some really good clips on that.
Oh my. Yeah, if I was ballsier than I was, I would have been Young Sheldon in the scenes when he's in. I kept my mouth shut, even though I didn't buy anything like that. If anybody, but in the Catholic Church, they didn't very often talk about Old Testament stuff anyway.
Right.
But
and Catholics aren't really supposed to read the Bible, right?
Yeah, it's whatever you just heard in the church. We didn't have Bible study. When I got older and I hear people do this, voluntarily multi-days a week, what are you doing?
And I find it, sorry, go ahead.
No, and how are you reading the stories of the abominations in the Old Testament and just what do you, and I think they just pass over those and they
Rob, you're taking it out of context.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it was out of context that God sent the bear to kill all the teenagers who were making fun of the bald guy.
Yeah,
et cetera. Okay, so as a final thing, you've mentioned some other things. Tell the folks what else you're involved with in the humanist sphere besides recovering from religion.
Oh, too many things. So I'm an officiant through Humanist Canada, so I can conduct weddings and funerals and many more memorial type events. And I also am currently a president in exile for Sunday Assembly Detroit.
What does that mean?
The USA is not very friendly to my kind right now, so it's been difficult for me to travel back and forth, and I'm getting a lot of questions at the border, so it's just kind of safer for me to stay on this side of the border for now, but I do live really close to Detroit, so it's has been easy for me to slip back and forth until recently. So right now I am the president of Sunday Assembly Detroit, but I had to do it from afar, unfortunately.
Wow. On behalf of this whole country, I'm sorry.
Well, we'll see. Maybe things will change soon. But right now, I have a Humanist Canada chapter that's in Windsor, Ontario, where I'm located, where we have a group of people who like to get together and just have some fun times and chat about philosophy and whatnot. And like we talked about before, I'm an author. I wrote the book Humanism from the Heart, Building Bridges Beyond Belief. If anyone wants to find it, it's available online. I try and make it free for the ebook every 3 months because they allow you to do that. So December is the next one. So if you think 3 months from that one, so it'd be December 19th, I think. And then, 3 months from there, 3 months from there, 3 months from there, they should all be free for a week. So if you can find it for free, do that. And then you don't have to pay your hard-earned money for words on paper.
So what site would that be on?
That's on Amazon, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, but you can get it anywhere that they sell books, Barnes & Noble, anything like that.
But the free thing is on Amazon, or
the free thing is on Amazon.
I didn't know that they did that. But that's a good tip with anything.
So it's through the ebook, like through Kindle. They have a Kindle promotion where I can do it free for a week. Yeah, and they only let you do it every 3 months.
Have you done an audio version?
Yeah, so the audiobook is on Audible, and it's actually really cheap because you're not allowed to pick your own price for it. They just do it based on the length of it. And mine is 2 hours and 59 minutes. So it didn't make the next bump, which would have been in 1 minute. It would have cost an extra $3. So you're lucky.
All right. That might be how I do it. I tend to do audio books these days. So
yeah. And I did the audiobook myself, and I consider myself the Timu version of Seth Andrews. I told him that too. He thought that was pretty funny.
All right. Well, I'll let you go. I know you're busy, and thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This has been a blast.